So I got a little criticism from somebody, right? But it had me pondering, this little criticism that I got. And it was basically, the criticism I got was basically on why am I looking so much stuff up on people that don't matter, like Pablo Escobar and whatnot. And, lately I've been in the, in that little wave to go into researching Pablo Escobar. There was at one point I was researching a lot of Charles Manson, these people that we consider a menace to society, heinous, evil people. You hear what I'm saying? But what's interesting to me is the mentality of these individuals and what drives an individual to this point to do what they do and why they do it. You hear what I'm saying? Sometimes we want to judge and demonize these people, but in actuality, you don't realize that you're doing the exact same thing, just in a different form. See, humans know not what they do sometimes. They point the finger, and most of the time, like I said, life is a reflection of what you're projecting out. And it doesn't have to be a direct reflection. Like I've made the example, when you lift up your right hand in my camera, it looks like I'm raising my left hand, yet I'm raising my right hand. It's a reflection, but it is not it's not the direct reflection, When you look at once upon a time in history, okay, we categorize certain things that we can't explain now as ancient lost civilizations, advanced lost technology. I don't think anything's lost. We just changed our way of doing things. So, for example, when I say humans know not what they do, you have certain people in different communities that, they want to join certain communities to cater to their ego. And you're made of communities of trillions of sentient cells. Okay? So and I'm going to get into the technology of you as the individual, whatever you think you are, the idea of what you think you are, inhabiting this ancient lost technology that supposedly we say is lost. It's just basically hidden, but it's hidden because you're hiding it from yourself. Okay? You come into this planet. Okay, when you look at the world, you can hear this from different areas of thought. It's not just spirituality. It's not just one. Listen to everybody, and they're all going to point you, and you can help connect dots to a certain source of where you think you come from. Let's say, okay, when you listen to financial gurus, they tell you your world is you inverted inside out. Okay, so that means that you don't see the world for how it is. You see the world for how you are, right? So when you look at this school of thought, okay, you are made of trillions of cells, okay? The cells have actually their own individual functions. They have a respiratory function, an excretory function. They eat. They basically have even their own immune system. They even have something organ-like organelles. That they're like the organs in your body, but they have organelles. Okay, so if you look at it, they're actually their own individual little sentient beings. That's what all these trillions of cells are. Okay, when we look up at the stars, you see so many stars, trillions of stars in the night sky that's transparent, right? You see all these stars. Okay, those are all mirrors of the people that you see around you. And when you see the word influenza, came from the word influence, and the short word for influenza is the flu. And influenza comes from the word influence, which means influence of the stars. When you start to analyze the stars, the planets and whatnot, this crystalline structured elements that they're made of is basically what the viruses that you basically have in your system, which are basically trillions. I'm talking about hundreds of trillions of viruses that predate Egyptian history. Okay, and these trillions of viruses, there's gnarly ones, there's good ones, and then there's bad ones. Okay, the bad ones are the ones that your body has to process and basically build a defense toward it. But it does that by processing it. So it builds a memory so that it builds a defense toward it because it had to process it to begin with, right? So let's say, for example, your body's not able to fight it, then you would basically cease to exist. You would die. Okay, so when you come into this planet, you're protected from these gnarly viruses by getting vaccinated. Okay, and don't forget, these vaccines are what, as a child, you're required to have even to participate in society. So for you to go to school, for you to do anything, you basically have to have a bookload of vaccines, right? Now, like I said, there's good viruses and there's bad viruses. The bad viruses are meant for your body to process, okay? Whatever weaknesses you have, they're passed down from your parents. It is the utmost optimal importance for a parent to know a little bit about their body for this reason to plan a child. When you have negative thought patterns or a poverty consciousness, you pass this down to your child based on the environment that you provide for them, the way you do things, the way your mentality is. Don't forget, your child's not intellectually learning anything. The child is just absorbing their surroundings, okay? So they're absorbing their surroundings because this is what they are. You get what I'm saying? The environment is them. So when you pass down genetic weaknesses, this is due to improper diet, what you're consuming. These things that you consume have an effect on your vibration, but also the thought patterns. The thought patterns are dependent on the vibration you're in. You can have lower vibrational thoughts or higher vibrational thoughts. When you eat higher frequency foods, you may tend to not have these negative thoughts because this information you're putting into your body comes from a higher vibrational source. So that's why when you eat meats and whatnot, not only are they a lower vibrational food because they're denser and your body has to work so hard to break that physical chemistry down, but also something that you're not taking into account is the metaphysical side of things. And a lot of, listen, I would think that even vegans could benefit from this, but a lot of vegans are stuck very into their intellect. They don't really delve into the metaphysics. And if they did, I feel like they would have a little bit more of a connection to that area of thought that they're in when it comes down to veganism, okay? But everything's just very intellect. So when you debate, it basically, they're just talking about the same thing, which I can explain in another video. But when you eat the animal, you're intaking the emotions of that animal as well. If the animal was killed a certain way, you're intaking those emotions. You're intaking the trauma, all that stress and discomfort that they felt while they were alive. They teach you this in elementary school. You can't kill, or you can only transfer and transmute energy. So you can't kill energy, right? But you can transmute it. As the God that you are, you could transmute energy. Just like if somebody's having a fucked up day and they're trying to fucking give you lower vibrational energy to you by telling you how fucked up their day is, and that you could just transmute it and show them the brighter side of things, right? You could do this even with people through the form of language. So when you eat these animals, this is where the whole concept of prayer came in. You transmute the energy, you pray over the food, and then now you can actually help this animal evolve from the lower animalistic state that it was in into a human form, right? But then if you think about it, okay, a lot of people argue and do a lot of crazy shit, but look how advanced this technology is. But a lot of people don't see this. How do you know these animals? Because if you look at what you're doing now in your life, we always try to figure out what we were in our past life, what we, how did we get to this point, who and what you are. You can always kind of gauge where you were in your past life based on what you're doing now, based on what your interests and likes are, based on what your triggers are, based on these little things. But don't just look at it direct. You have to look at it again. Sometimes it may be a direct or an indirect reflection. But at the end of the day, you've been all these things. This is all you. There is no I was this and you label yourself that. I was an Egyptian pharaoh, or I was a healer in this Egyptian history, or I was a Pleiadian from this and that. No, you've been all these things. All these things are made of you. Okay? So, and all these things wouldn't even exist if it wasn't in you first. You wouldn't even know about it as a thought or whatever it may be. Right? But you gotta get off looking at it literal and sometimes learn to decode these little things, which I'm gonna get into with the technology that we've supposedly said we lost, okay? But when you look at, you're transmuting this energy, but aside from all that, how do you know that these animals that are going through those extreme conditions weren't like serial killers or weren't something in their past life that got them to the point to actually de-evolve into that state to have that experience? Because one would think, well, why does that animal have to get bred into existence to be in that state? And then, we look at that as that's a bad situation for that animal and we want to defend these animals. You get what I'm saying? Because look at it like this. Whatever sentience decided to inhabit that? Did they decide to inhabit that? Or were they in that frequency or vibrational state that they have to experience that in physical form before they can evolve? But at the same time, when you look at it like this, not all animals are going to be eaten by a conscious human. One animal may get eaten by a conscious human that may help that animal go from that state that they're in to evolve into a higher evolution now, because you basically intook that chemistry. It's kind of like a sacrifice to the body, because the body is the planet. So Jesus Christ sacrificed himself for the sins of the world, right? But Jesus Christ also fasted. And what did that do? That was a required discipline to fast, right? You may have gone through some extreme healing crises, all in the interest of purifying your body, which is the planet, okay? So when you look at it from this point of view, how do you heal a person, right? Can you, as an empath, we all talk about this, can you take on that person's trauma to some extent? Can you put yourself really in that person's shoes, process that chemistry through this vessel and transmute it? And it's no different than, you give your traumas and all that. Sometimes when you go and ground to the soil on the planet, Mother Earth, you give off those positive ions. She gives you back those negative ions, right? So you give off those traumas and that waste through the soles of your feet. The planet will gladly process that for you. We can call that God. I leave things in the hands of God to take care of things for me. But God is in all places, in all things for you. God is in all people. Sometimes people may help you heal by just talking to you. It doesn't require you having to take a medicine or an herb or any kind of treatment. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes somebody just needs to talk to somebody, and you can help that person by just talking to that person. That's a form of transmutating that energy, because when you're listening to that person, you're present with that person. You are forming mental pictures, but you're aware of how to process this chemistry and then transmute it. And that person passed that on to you. See, this is a very delicate topic to get into, because a lot of the times you don't want to take other people's karma. You don't want to do any of that stuff, because as a healer, for example, people may have get lost in their profession and take on these people's burdens, but then they don't know how to eliminate that from their space as well. Okay, so I'm gonna put it like this: that animal that you ate, you're putting it into your vessel as a sacrifice, but you are aware that you can transmute this energy, right? Your body, when you eat the physical part of the meat, it knows to extract the nutrients and poop out the waste. However, it's a very complex chemistry. It requires a lot of energy from the body. And aside from that, if you imbalance the body with so much of this chemistry, it starts to rob the body from other sources like the bone matrix. So because this is such acidic foods, your body will take calcium from the bones to balance out the chemistry, because calcium is a buffering agent. And what this does is it keeps you in a more balanced homeostasis state. So your body always tries to find that neutral state balance. Neutral is natural. Nature is natural, right? When you go into nature, nature doesn't discriminate. Nature is neutral. Everything in your environment is neutral, right? The marketing, the business aspect of the world is also neutral. It doesn't discriminate, right? If you're being a service to people, people think it's just bad or good. There is no bad or good. That side of the business is also neutral. If you need something that's going to heal you, I can be a service to you. If I am a service to you, then I get paid back in the form of either attention, interest, or money, okay? Or energetic exchange to some extent. If you, for example, are a drug addict and I sell drugs and you need drugs because you are now going through these withdrawal symptoms, and I have that product to cater to that fix, that addiction in the form of a fix, then I give you drugs, you give me money, and I was just a service to you. You get what I'm saying? But supply and demand. Now, you got guys back in day, like Pablo Escobar, okay? Pablo Escobar was somebody who supplied cocaine based on supply and demand. Cocaine is a drug that's highly addictive, all right? So it does harm to people. But, like I said, he made so much money that in this physical realm, he literally created his... See, when we look at it as a human, we look at what in God we trust. You see that in your money, right? But the God would be who you depend on. People depend on a religious God to come down and save them, right? In physical form, people depend on religion, the government, the doctors. So these are technically your gods. How do you become God of this realm? You become self-sufficient, right? So you know how to heal yourself. The land is you, inverted inside out. So look how precious this is. Just with your chemistry, because if I walk my garden and I have a green thumb, my plants are going to flourish and they're going to respond to me in a way where they're going to give me certain fruits. But it goes so deep that just with my presence, certain herbs may grow in my surroundings because the land knows that I may need those herbs because they sense the deficiency in me because the land is me, right? The body always does everything to cater to its homeostasis. But now if you were actually introducing this chemistry even physically, where you were able to pee in the soil, even use your poop as a form of compost, right? You're giving your chemistry to the land in kind, because that should be nutrients where the microorganisms and all that process that chemistry and they bring you back food or fruits. All right, that is going to help you even further balance it on a much deeper level, the chemistry of your body. If you're walking on the soil, you should walk barefoot because now you're introducing that chemistry. So now the land knows even more rather than you just having to be a presence in there. So when I walk my garden, walking it barefoot may be a much deeper commune with my land than me walking barefoot, because you come into this planet, you're coming into this planet with the interest of disconnecting you from you as much as possible. Because for one, walking with insulated rubber shoes keeps you from connecting to the land, right? The fact that you are using computers and doctors and religion and all these things outside of you disconnects you from your power. The fact that you have to get vaccinated every time, don't forget those stars in the planet, so as above so below, those viruses are responsible for you even being here as an evolved human. Now they're responsible for the evolution of your species, the DNA that we call junk DNA. These viruses can actually help kickstart these junk DNA, okay? And it particularly happens during that death process, right? So during that death process, you have something called dimethyltryptamine that you in abundance let out, right? When you die, you release a certain amount when you're sleeping. So if you look at it, sleep is the cousin of death, right? But the point of consciousness and awareness, this is why it's so important. Because when you go into sleep, right? Notice how you're just having an experience, but you don't realize that it was a dream until the moment you wake up. You know what I'm saying? So what happens when you die? If you haven't strengthened that consciousness, you're just going merging from one state to another with no awareness, no consciousness, right? So the same way here, for your species to evolve when in contact with these viruses. So when you come into this planet, you're designed to actually be able to process these viruses, all of them, because there's no virus you're catching. There's a merging or a commune from these viruses to come in contact with your DNA, because you're actually technically dying every day. The moment you're born into this planet, you're slowly dying every day. And every time you sleep, it's a regenerative experience, but it's also a slow death. So what happens when you die, right? If you don't evolve your DNA, you may reincarnate back along with, let's say, your belief, your thought patterns and whatnot, and what you're a frequency matched to. You're going to be able to come back here as a species, as a human again, okay? So when we start to look at the evolvement of things, life is about evolving, right? Like I said, you ever hear what you eat becomes you, and what you eat becomes you, and what eats you become, right? So when you're eating animals, you could transmute this animal. When you die, you go back to the soil. Man comes back to the, when you die, you go back to the soil, but you come from the soil. This is something that you hear in the Bible. I saw this movie Trolls, and I saw that, the mountain just basically came to life, and it was like anthropomorphized as much as possible with legs, arms. It looked like a walking person, right? But it was a big walking mountain, and it was just walking nature. What it was nature walking, right? You are like nature walking, like a walking tree. So you should have as much of a interaction with the soil. That's why when kids play in the soil at a young age, they say that they're strengthening their immune system. Mr. Fauci himself, in one of his older videos, specifically said that if you have a virus, that's your best defense against the virus. You don't need any vaccines, because the fact that you have the virus, or if you healed from it, that was your actual defense toward that vaccine. I mean, that virus, right? Now, again, there's good viruses, bad viruses. I'm not telling you viruses don't exist or viruses are beneficial. However, if you catch or happen to develop flu-like symptoms, understand that this is the ultimate detox for the body. So I'm not telling you to get vaccinated or not get vaccinated. However, because everything has its place, everything has its purpose. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not making medical claims here. None of my information is backed up by medical science or medical evidence. Not scientific fact, not scientific evidence. I am not a medical doctor, so I make that disclaimer now for you, okay? However, when you get a vaccine, they're injecting you with the actual virus, but it is not the natural virus. It is a laboratory-made virus, all in the interest for your body to build a defense toward the virus that already exists in the form of influenza, influence from the stars. So in actuality, you start to question and ask yourself this: well, if I'm getting the virus injected into me, why don't I just let myself catch this virus? And then now I can build a defense and information toward it. Why the emphasis on getting the vaccines when you could just catch it yourself? You get what I'm saying? And if you catch it yourself, you build a defense toward it. However, it's no different than if I genetically modify an animal or a fruit. Is it the same as what actually comes from nature in the form of information for my body? You get what I'm saying? So the same way, my chemistry is introduced to the soil by walking on it, right? So if I grow food and I eat it from the land, I am introducing a certain chemistry into my body with a much deeper level of information than me buying a laboratory grown watermelon, for example. So if I, for example, am a natural human, which you're not even human, you're mainly made of more virus than you the viruses outnumber the bacteria. But as far as human, you're barely human. So you are a form of alien to this planet. Now, if you look at, ask yourself, what is consciousness? I'm gonna make this in the next video. All right, so this video, if you like this, like it, and that helps my channel out. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie in the part 2 to this particular topic on consciousness, and then I'm gonna tie a couple of other things as far as like what it is to actually even be God. We'll talk soon.